I woke up with a jolt to the insistent ringing of my cell phone on the nightstand. That loud, sharp noise that cuts through the pre-dawn silence like a knife. My heart immediately started pounding even before I fully opened my eyes. Who calls at 5 o'clock in the morning? Nobody calls at this hour unless it's something terrible. Death, an accident, tragedy. My mind went straight to the worst. I fumbled on the nightstand, reaching for the phone, still groggy from sleep. When I finally grabbed the device, the screen light blinded me for a few seconds. Unknown number. It wasn't anyone in my contact list. My chest tightened even more. Was it the hospital? Some distant relative had fallen ill. But what relative, Henry? You have no one left. Rachel is gone. My parents passed away years ago. We had no children. Who could it be? I answered with a voice rough with sleep. Hello? I waited to hear a voice on the other end. Some bad news? Or maybe a mistake. But what I heard froze me completely. It wasn't just any voice. It was the voice. The voice I had heard every single day for 40 years. The voice I hadn't heard for 6 months because its owner was buried in the cemetery plot at Greenlawn Memorial Park. Mr. Thompson? A woman's professional voice spoke, polite, but with a strange, strained tone. This is Ms. Albright from First City Bank. I apologize for calling so early, but we have a highly unusual situation that requires your immediate attention regarding Mrs. Rachel Thompson's account. My entire body stiffened. Every hair on my arm stood on end. You know that chill that creeps up your spine when you're utterly terrified? That's what I felt. But it wasn't just fear. It was confusion, pure disbelief. Mrs. Thompson? I finally managed, my voice shaking. Rachel passed away 6 months ago. You must have the wrong number or the wrong file. I am aware of Mrs. Thompson's passing, Mr. Thompson. That is why I am calling. The bank representative continued, her tone dropping to an almost conspiratorial whisper. The records are clear. However, the system flagged a recent activity. At 4:45 a.m. this morning, a large withdrawal of $10,000 was processed at an ATM at the corner of Elm Street and Fifth Avenue. My blood ran cold. $10,000? That's impossible. Her accounts were frozen right after the funeral, except for the trust fund, and she had no ATM access left. She died on June 8th. I was there. I identified the body. I buried her. I understand your distress, sir, the woman said, sounding genuinely concerned now. But the withdrawal was verified. The card used was Mrs. Thompson's primary debit card, and the security camera footage at the ATM. I cannot confirm the identity right now. But the person who made the withdrawal appears to be an elderly woman who bears an uncanny resemblance to the photo we have on file for Mrs. Thompson. Furthermore, the ATM is just 3 blocks from your residence. I dropped the phone on the bed, stumbling backward until I hit the wall. The wall was cold and hard, confirming that this was real, that I wasn't dreaming. Someone who looked exactly like Rachel, had just withdrawn $10,000 using her card on her 67th birthday. I looked at the framed photo of Rachel on the dresser. I looked at the dark room, only lit by the soft glow of the nightlight that I always leave on, because I've been afraid of the dark since I've been alone. My mind was trying to process the information. The bank was calling me at 5 o'clock in the morning on October 23rd, telling me my dead wife had just drained $10,000 from her account using an ATM near our house. This is not possible, I whispered aloud, more to myself than to the phone lying on the comforter. Rachel is gone. She is gone. She died? I saw it. I buried her. My voice failed. Tears started falling, uncontrollable. Who are you? What kind of cruel joke is this? I grabbed the phone again. Henry, the woman said, using my name in the same tone Rachel used to, with that affection, that intimacy of someone who shared 40 years of life with me. I am sorry to have been the bearer of such news, but you must report this to the police immediately. We'll freeze the account again right now, but you need to get here with proof of identity and a death certificate. I will be there, I stammered. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the device. I got out of bed, staggering, my legs weak, my head swimming. I flicked on the bedroom light, and the sudden brightness made me squint. Was I going crazy? Had I missed her so much, talked to her picture so often, lived in the past for so long that my mind had finally snapped? I put my hand on my chest, feeling my heart hammering. I was alive, yes, and this was actually happening. I left the room with trembling steps, still clutching the phone. The house was silent. Only the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the ticking clock on the living room wall. Each step on the hardwood floor made an eerie creaking sound. I looked in the hallway mirror and saw my reflection. An older man with white hair, wrinkled pajamas, his eyes wide open with terror. When I got near the front door, I stopped. My hand was sweating. The phone was beginning to slip from my wet fingers. I hung up. I grabbed the heavy wooden cross above the coat rack in the entrance. It was a cross my father gave me when I married Rachel. He always said the cross keeps bad things away. I held it tightly, as if it could protect me from something unearthly. My free hand reached for the doorknob, but stopped before touching the cold metal. What if it was a ghost? What if I opened that door and saw what? A spirit, the ghost of Rachel herself, returned from the grave to collect a debt? Who is there? I asked aloud, my voice trembling. If you are truly who you seem to be, speak to me. Tell me something that only Rachel and I know, something that no one else in the entire world knows. I stood there, gripping the cross, waiting. The silence seemed to last forever. Then, my doorbell rang. Ding dong! A loud, simple sound, yet it echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. The sound came from right behind the door. I almost screamed. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding so fast I thought it would burst. I reached for the peephole. I closed one eye, pressed the other against the glass lens, and looked outside. The light from the street lamp dimly illuminated the porch. And there, standing on my doorstep, was a woman. The breath rushed out of my lungs. It was her. It was Rachel's face. The same height, the same salt and pepper hair, the same shape of the face, the same nose, the same mouth. She was looking right at me, as if she knew I was on the other side looking out. And then, she smiled. That smile, Rachel's smile. My legs gave out. The cross fell from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. My vision began to narrow at the edges. The last thought I had before collapsing was, my God, she came back. Rachel returned from the dead, and then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, the afternoon sun was streaming through my bedroom window. It took me a few seconds to understand where I was, in my bed, tucked under the quilt. The light of a bright autumn day was hitting my face. I blinked several times, confused. How had I gotten into bed? The last thing I remembered was being at the front door, looking through the peephole and seeing her. I bolted upright in bed, my heart racing again. Was it a dream? A crazy, terrifying nightmare? I ran a trembling hand over my face. No, it wasn't a dream. I had fainted, yes, and someone had put me in bed, covered me up. Someone was inside my house. That's when I heard a noise coming from the kitchen. The unmistakable sound of a ceramic mug hitting the counter, the kettle whistling on the stove, and a voice softly humming a tune. As time goes by, a song from Casablanca, Rachel's favorite movie. My entire body was tense again. I wanted to find the courage to get up, go to the kitchen, and see who was there, but I was paralyzed with fear. This wasn't the fear of dying. It was the fear of losing my mind. The fear of discovering I had finally gone crazy and was hearing things, seeing things that didn't exist. But the smell of freshly brewed coffee, was filling the house. Fresh, strong coffee, just the way I like it. And there was another smell too, the scent of blueberry muffins baking in the oven. My God, how long had it been since the smell of home-cooked food filled this house? Since Rachel left, I only microwaved frozen meals, if I even bothered to eat. I forced my legs to move. I got up slowly, still dizzy. My bare feet touched the cold floor. Each step toward the bedroom door seemed to last an eternity. My hand grabbed the door frame for support. I took a deep breath and started walking down the hallway toward the kitchen. The humming had stopped. All I could hear was the sound of someone moving things, pulling a plate from the cabinet, a spoon from the drawer. When I reached the kitchen door, I stood there, my hand gripping the frame, too afraid to go in. I could see a silhouette of a woman's back moving by the stove. Rachel's height. Rachel's way of moving. She was wearing a simple cotton dress, the kind Rachel wore around the house, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, a few silver strands escaping. "Good afternoon, Henry," the voice said without turning around. "The coffee is ready. I made it just the way you like." My mouth was so dry I could barely speak. Who are you?" She turned around slowly, and I saw the face again. That face, but now, in the light of day, I could see better. Was it Rachel's face? Yes. But there was something different. Something my brain couldn't immediately identify. The same hazel eyes, the same nose, the same mouth. But something was off. "You passed out last night," she said in a calm voice, as if talking about the weather. "When you fell, you made a terrible noise. I came in, picked you up off the floor, and put you in bed. Are you all right? Did you hit your head?" I leaned against the kitchen wall, needing the support because my legs were weak again. I must be going crazy. This isn't real. You can't be here. You can't be. She's dead. Rachel is dead. She looked at me with a sad expression, placed the mug she was holding on the table, and took a step toward me. Instinctively, I backed away. She stopped, respecting my space. "Sit down, Henry, please. I need to tell you a story. A story you don't know. A story even Rachel didn't know." No. I was shaking my head, refusing to believe anything. "You are a ghost. You are an apparition. I don't know what you are, but you can't be real. Dead people don't come back. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist." "I am not Rachel," she said, the words coming out slowly, carefully. "My name is Stella. I am her twin sister." The world stopped. I swear, in that moment, the entire world ceased to spin. "What?" was all I could manage to say. "Sister?" Rachel had no sister. She was an only child. In 40 years of marriage, she never mentioned a sister. "Because she didn't know," Stella replied, her eyes welling up with tears. "Rachel never knew I existed. Our mother never told her. It was a secret she took to her grave. I felt my legs give way. I collapsed into the kitchen chair, the same chair where I sat every day, just for coffee. I buried my face in my hands, trying to process what I was hearing. This makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. A twin sister? How? Rachel didn't know. Stella pulled up another chair and sat across from me, keeping a respectful distance. Can I show you? I brought documents, photos, everything that proves what I'm saying. But first, please, let me tell you. After that, you decide whether to believe it or not. I was in too much shock to respond. I just nodded my head in a mechanical gesture. She took a deep breath, as if preparing for a painful confession, and began to speak. We were born here in New England, me and Rachel, identical twins. Our mother, Evelyn, was widowed shortly before we were born. Our father died in a construction accident. He never even got to see us. She was left alone, pregnant with twins, penniless, with no support. It was a very difficult time for her. I remembered Evelyn, a quiet woman, with that sadness I had never quite understood. Rachel always said her mother had been like that for as long as she could remember, withdrawn, melancholic. Now I was beginning to understand why. When we were born, the situation got even worse, Stella continued, her voice choked with emotion. 2 babies to raise without a penny in her pocket. My mother did small sewing jobs, washed clothes for others, but it was barely enough to eat. There were days when there wasn't even that. 2 babies crying from hunger, and she had nothing to give them. She paused, wiping away a rolling tear. I was so engrossed in the story that I didn't even realize I was holding my breath. That's when a wealthy family from Boston showed up, acquaintances of a friend of my mother's. They couldn't have children and wanted to adopt. When they found out there were twins, they made a proposal. I already knew what was coming, but I didn't want to believe it. No, I murmured. Yes, Stella confirmed. They wanted to adopt one of the twins. They offered money. They guaranteed the girl would have everything best in life: education, food, a good home, a future. And Mom, my God, Mom didn't want to. She cried, she begged, she tried every way to refuse, but she was desperate. There was no way to feed 2 children. She could barely feed one. She gave you away? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She gave me away, Stella confirmed, tears now flowing freely. I was 2 years old. We were just beginning to talk, to play together. We were inseparable, as twins often are. And then, one day, a big, nice car arrived. A very well-dressed couple got out. I remember Mom crying, hugging me tight. I remember Rachel screaming, trying to grab me. We were separated by force. The last thing I saw was Rachel screaming at the window, and Mom holding her back. The silence that settled in the kitchen was heavy. My mind was trying to fit all the pieces together. Rachel's mother had given one daughter away, kept the other, and never told anyone. For 40 years, she never told. The family who adopted me, Stella continued, wiping her face with her hands, were good people in a way. They raised me well, gave me an education, everything the best materially. But they made one demand: no contact whatsoever with my birth family. They said I was their daughter now, that I had to forget the past, and they made Mom promise never to tell Rachel that she had a sister. Why? I asked, my voice failing. Why did Evelyn agree to that? Why did she never tell? Because it was the condition, Stella replied. She either accepted, and at least one of her daughters would have a good life, or she refused, and both would suffer in poverty. She thought she was doing the right thing. She thought it would be easier for Rachel to grow up thinking she was an only child than to grow up knowing she had a sister who was taken away. I got up from the chair, staggering to the window. I needed air, needed to process all of this. Rachel had a sister, a twin sister, and she never knew. She lived her whole life without knowing that her other half existed, living, breathing, somewhere in America. You knew? I asked without turning around. You knew you had a sister? Yes, Stella replied from behind me. My adoptive parents told me when I became an adult. They said they thought I had the right to know, but they continued to forbid me to search. They said it would destroy her life, that it was better to leave things as they were. And you obeyed? There was a hint of anger in my voice. Anger at the whole absurd situation. For a long time, yes. Her voice was weak. I was scared. Scared of showing up and having Rachel reject me. Scared that she would hate me for having a good life while she stayed in poverty. Scared of destroying her peace. But always, I felt like a piece of me was missing. I always felt an emptiness that nothing could fill. I turned to look at her, and that's when I noticed it. The mole. Rachel had a small mole on the right side of her face, near her mouth. I always found it beautiful. And Stella had the exact same mole, but on the left side. Mirror twins, she said, noticing my gaze. Identical twins with reversed characteristics. Very rare, but it happens. It was too much information. Too much information for my aging heart to process. I sat back down in the chair, my head in my hands. When my adoptive parents died a few years ago, I finally found the courage to search, Stella continued. I hired a private investigator. It wasn't hard to find. New England is big, but our hometown is small. He gave me the address. He told me Rachel was married to a retired carpenter named Henry, that they had no children, but were very happy. You came all this way? I lifted my head to look at her. I came a few years ago. I stayed at a small motel, gathered my courage, and went to your house. But when I got close and saw the two of you through the window, laughing together, so happy, I lost my nerve. I thought it would be selfish of me to destroy that. I went back to Boston and tried to forget. Tears were returning, on her face and on mine. But you didn't forget, I said. I didn't forget. I never could forget. She was my sister, my half. And I had never even talked to her. Then, 6 months ago. She stopped, her voice fading. 6 months ago, I saw the obituary in the local paper. My heart ached. You knew she died. I knew, and my world collapsed. I had lost the opportunity forever. I would never meet my sister. I would never be able to hug her, talk to her, tell her I existed. It was too late. Her tears were pouring down now, and mine too, because in a strange way, I understood her pain. It was similar to mine, the pain of losing Rachel, the pain of an emptiness that nothing could fill. I came to the burial, she continued, her voice ragged with sobs. I stood hidden behind a big oak tree, far from everyone. I saw the casket being lowered. I saw you crying, devastated. I saw the grave being closed, and I cried too. I cried for the sister I never knew, for the life we never lived together. Why didn't you leave afterward? I asked. Why did you stay here? She looked me in the eyes. Because you were the closest connection I had to her. You loved my sister. You knew her in a way I never would. And I couldn't leave knowing you were here, suffering alone, with no one. That's when everything started to make sense. You watched me, I said. For these 6 months, you stayed here and watched me. Yes, she admitted, ashamed. I rented a small place a few streets away and I saw you every day. Going to the grocery store, going to the cemetery. I saw you wasting away alone, and several times I came to your door. I tried to ring the bell, but I turned back. I didn't know how to explain, how to show up and say, "Hi, I'm the twin sister of your dead wife, the one she never knew she had." How could you possibly believe me? Last night I couldn't take it anymore, she interrupted. I was passing by here late at night. I was walking aimlessly because I couldn't sleep. I saw your light on. I knew you weren't sleeping either, and suddenly, without thinking, I grabbed my phone and called. When you answered and I heard your voice, it was stronger than me. I spoke. I asked you to open the door. And when you opened the peephole and saw me, you fainted. We stayed in silence for a long moment. The coffee had grown cold on the table. The blueberry muffins had cooled in the oven. I looked at this woman, that face so familiar, yet so strange. The twin sister of my Rachel. The person she never knew, but who had existed somewhere all along. And then the question that was burning inside me came out. How did you know? About the ATM? Stella looked at me, and for a moment I saw something different in her eyes. A hesitation, as if she was deciding whether to tell me the truth or not. She took a deep breath, got up from the chair, and went to a large, old, worn leather bag in the corner of the kitchen. She opened it and began taking things out. Papers, envelopes, photographs. There's a part of the story I haven't told you yet, she said, returning to the table with her arms full of documents. She placed everything in front of me. I saw birth certificates, old black and white photos, papers yellowed with age. Mom, Evelyn, died 5 years ago. I remembered it. Rachel had been devastated when her mother passed away. She spent days crying, blaming herself for things that weren't her fault, saying she should have visited more, called more, been more present. I tried to comfort her, but she was inconsolable. When she died, Stella continued, picking up an antique, blue hardback notebook, I came to the burial, again hidden, again from afar. And later I found out that her house had been left to Rachel. There was no one else in the family. Only her. Or so everyone thought. She opened the notebook carefully, like handling something precious and fragile. I didn't have the courage to present myself as an heir. I left everything to Rachel. After all, she was the one who took care of Mom all her life. She was the one who was present. I had no right to anything. But I needed to have something of Mom's, some memory. You went into the house? I asked, starting to understand. I went in one night after Rachel had gone there to clean and organize things. I knew where she kept the spare key, under the fern pot on the back porch. I crept in, scared, feeling like a thief, but I only wanted one thing, one specific thing. She stroked the cover of the notebook. This diary. I knew Mom kept this diary because when I was little, before I was adopted, I remember her writing in it every night. She wrote about her daughters, about me, and about Rachel, about the things we did, the things we said. It was her way of holding on to the memories. My heart squeezed. A diary. Evelyn had a diary where she wrote about both daughters. After I was taken away, Stella said, her voice getting weaker and weaker. She continued writing about Rachel, about her life. All the little things, first steps, first words, school friends. And when Rachel grew up, she wrote about boyfriends, joys, sorrows, everything. Mom recorded everything here. She opened the diary to a marked page, including the day Rachel met you. My blood ran cold again. She turned the worn diary toward me and pointed to a passage written in small, careful handwriting. I began to read, my vision blurred by tears. October 23rd. Today, Rachel came home giggling like a fool. Said she met a boy at the park, a tall, strong young man who works at a carpentry shop. She said he tried to buy her an ice cream cone to impress her, but he was so nervous he spilled the whole thing on the skirt of her new dress. Rachel laughed so hard she choked on her soda. She said it was the funniest date of her life. It made me so happy to see my girl smiling like that. It's been a long time since I've seen her so cheerful. I think that Henry is special. Tears were falling onto the diary page. I could barely see the words. She wrote it down, I murmured. Her mother wrote down the ice cream story. She wrote it down, Stella confirmed. And not only that, she wrote everything about your courtship, the wedding, your married life. Even in her last days, when she was very sick, she wrote about Rachel and about you, about how happy you were together, about how guilty she felt. Guilty? I looked at her. Yes, here on the last pages. She flipped through the diary until almost the end. She wrote about regretting separating the twins, about the guilt of keeping the secret. She wished she had told Rachel about me, but she was scared. Scared of being rejected. Scared of destroying the image her daughter had of her. Stella pointed to a specific passage. I should have told her. I should have told her when Rachel became an adult. I should have given her the chance to meet her sister. But I was a coward. And now it's too late. If I tell her now, after all this time, she'll hate me. She'll hate me for keeping this secret her whole life. It's better to take this to the grave. And that's what she did. She took it to the grave. She died without ever telling Rachel that she had a twin sister. So, when the bank called last night, I said slowly, and you used the ATM, you knew it was Rachel's birthday today from the diary, and you used the ATM close by, knowing the bank would call me? Stella looked me in the eyes. I didn't use the ATM, she admitted. I saw the diary entry about the $10,000 withdrawal that Rachel planned to make today for her retirement account, and I saw an opportunity. Not to steal, but to force a confrontation. I needed you to call the bank. I needed them to call you. I needed to create a situation so shocking that you would have to listen to me. You faked the withdrawal? I said, incredulous. You went to the ATM, looked like Rachel, but didn't actually withdraw the money? I couldn't, Stella said, her eyes apologetic. I tried. I had to make the plan work, but the card was blocked. I used the withdrawal button, I put in the $10,000, but the machine said, transaction canceled. I tried to call the bank, but they were closed. I thought my whole plan was ruined. I walked away, depressed, and that's when I passed your house and saw the light on. I called you from my cell phone. I used the same voice, and I asked you to open the door. My mind spun. The whole thing was a lie built on a failed bank transaction. She was desperate. Desperate enough to use her twin's face to force a conversation. Then, when I asked you last night, I said slowly, about something only Rachel and I knew, you knew it from the diary? Yes, she admitted. I read the whole diary several times. It was the only way I had to get to know my sister, through our mother's words. I knew everything about her life, the dreams, the fears, the joys. I knew about the ice cream story. I knew you wanted to have children but couldn't. I knew she sang in the church choir. I knew her favorite color was blue. I knew everything. Everything except her, because I never talked to her. I picked up the diary with trembling hands. I started flipping through it, page after page of careful handwriting, years and years of Rachel's life recorded there. And in the middle of the entries about Rachel, there were entries about Stella too. Today I wonder how Stella is. She must be a grown-up now. How old is she? Does she look like Rachel? Does she have the same tastes? Do they miss each other without knowing? She thought about you, I said. Mom thought about you. She thought about me, Stella replied. But she never went looking for me. She never tried to find me. She respected the agreement she had made with the adoptive family. And I understand. In those days, such an agreement was sacred. To break it would be to dishonor her word. But that doesn't make it any less painful. I closed the diary carefully. I looked at Stella. I really looked at her, not as Rachel's ghost, but as herself. A woman who had grown up separated from her sister, who had lived a parallel life, who had the same genes, the same face, but a completely different story. Tell me, I requested. Tell me about you. Not about Rachel, about you. Who is Stella? She seemed surprised by the request, as if no one had ever been interested in her as a person. She wiped her tears and gave a timid smile. I also married many years ago, an architect from Boston. A good, hard-working man. But he passed away 8 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. We didn't have children either, she continued. We tried, but it didn't happen. Seems like that runs in the family, doesn't it? Both sisters unable to have children. And what did you do for a living? I was a designer, she replied. I designed clothing. The family that adopted me paid for a good fashion school in New York. I worked for a few companies. I even had my own small brand for a while. Nothing too big, but I liked it. A designer. Rachel was a seamstress. Both worked with clothes, with fabric, with needle and thread. Without ever having met, they had chosen similar paths. And did you sing? I asked. She smiled. I sang in the church choir in Boston, every week. That's where I felt most at peace. Exactly like Rachel. Both sang in church choirs. Do you like strong coffee? I already knew the answer. I love it, she said, chuckling slightly. The stronger the better. My husband always complained that my coffee was too strong. Rachel too, I said, feeling a warmth in my chest. I always joked that her coffee could wake the dead. We stayed silent, letting the similarities and coincidences hang in the air. Two identical women who never met but lived mirror lives. Same tastes, same passions, same sorrows. I can ask you a question? Stella asked, hesitantly. Sure. Did you visit her grave often? Every Sunday, I replied without fail. I bring flowers, clean the headstone, and sit there talking to her. The groundskeepers already know me. They probably think I'm half crazy, but they let me. I went too, she confessed softly. Not every Sunday, but I went. I always stayed far away so you wouldn't see me. But I brought flowers too. I left them next to yours. My heart squeezed. The unmarked lilies. Sometimes I would arrive, and there would be a bouquet of white lilies there. No card, no note. That was me. I always thought it was some neighbor, some friend of Rachel's. I never imagined it was the sister she didn't know she had. One day, Stella continued, I came early, and you were still there. I saw you from afar, crying, talking to the headstone, saying you missed her, that the house was empty without her, that you didn't know how to keep living. And I wanted to run to you, hug you, say I understood the pain, but I didn't have the courage. Why not? Because I wasn't her. You loved her, not me. I would just be a painful reminder, a shadow, a living ghost of the person you lost. And now? I asked. Why did you find the courage now? She looked at her own hands. Because I saw you wasting away. 6 months passed, and you didn't get any better. Worse. You were getting worse. I saw you lose weight. I saw you walk hunched over on the streets. I saw you giving up on life, and I couldn't bear it. I thought, I have her face. I have her voice. Maybe, just maybe, I can offer some comfort to this man who loved my sister so much. But now that you told the truth, I said, now that I know you aren't her, what do you expect to happen? She looked at me with those hazel eyes, so similar to Rachel's, yet different. There was a sadness in them, a loneliness that I recognized because it was the same one I felt. I don't expect anything, she said honestly. If you want me to leave, I will. I'll disappear from your life, and you never have to see me again. I understand that all of this is too strange, too painful. But if you let me, I would like to stay, not to replace her. No one will ever replace Rachel, but to get to know the man she loved, to hear stories about her, to somehow have a piece of the sister I never knew. The coffee was completely cold now. The morning had advanced, and the sun was high outside, streaming through the kitchen window, illuminating that surreal scene. The twin sister of my dead wife and I, sitting in the same kitchen where Rachel and I had shared coffee for 40 years. Stay, I said. The word came out before I thought much. At least for today. We need to talk more. There are so many things I still need to understand. Her face lit up with a smile, a shy, hopeful smile. Thank you, Henry. You don't know how much this means to me. But something was still bothering me, a piece of the puzzle that didn't quite fit. Stella, I said, there's something I still don't understand. You said you read your mother's diary. That's how you knew the ice cream story and other things about Rachel's life. But there are things the diary wouldn't have. Intimate feelings, private thoughts. How do you know so much about her? It seems like you knew her better than the diary could tell. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something that made me completely shiver. Because I dreamed about her. You dreamed? I repeated. Unsure if I had understood correctly, Stella nodded slowly, her eyes distant as if reliving old memories. Since I was a child, always, I had recurring dreams about a girl exactly like me. At first, when I was very small, I thought I was dreaming about myself. But the girl in the dream was in different places, with different people. And as I grew up, the dreams continued. She got up and went to the window, looking out as if searching for the right words. I saw her in a simple, small home. I saw a woman sewing, who I later understood was our mother. I saw rolling hills all around. These New England hills, which I only saw in person after I was an adult. I saw her playing in the streets, going to church, helping Mom. It was as if I was living her life through the dreams. Is that possible? I asked, incredulous. Twins have a connection, she replied, still looking out the window. A connection that science doesn't fully explain. There are studies on it. Identical twins who were separated at birth, yet still develop the same tastes, the same habits. They even marry similar people, as if there's an invisible thread connecting them, no matter the distance. I read a lot about it when I became an adult, after I found out about Rachel, trying to understand the dreams, and I discovered that there are many documented cases of twins feeling each other's pain, knowing when the other is in danger, dreaming about the other's life. It's not paranormal. It's something in the genetic, neurological connection, something science is still trying to understand. I remembered something. Rachel dreamed too, I said suddenly. She had recurring dreams about a girl who looked like her. She never quite understood. She would wake up talking about those dreams, half confused. She said the girl was in a big city, in places different from the ones she knew. Stella's eyes widened. She dreamed about me too? She must have. She described that girl. She said it was like looking in a mirror. But we always thought they were just strange dreams, you know? Things in her head. We never imagined that. I stopped, the realization hitting me like a punch. We never imagined she was actually seeing the twin sister she didn't know she had. Stella covered her face with her hands. My God, we were connected all this time, even without knowing each other, even without knowing of each other's existence. We were linked. Mom's diary, I said, remembering. Was there anything about those dreams in the diary? She picked up the notebook again and flipped to a specific page. It has. Look here. She began to read. Rachel had that dream again about the girl who looks like her. This time she dreamed the girl was at a fancy party, wearing a beautiful dress. She woke up confused, saying she doesn't understand these dreams. My heart clenches every time she tells me. Could it be Stella she's seeing? Do they sense each other without knowing? What a burden to carry this secret. Stella's voice failed. Mom knew. She knew we were connected through dreams and never told. She never explained to Rachel what those dreams meant. The silence that fell over the kitchen was heavy with pain and regret. Not our regret, but that of Evelyn, the woman who had made a desperate decision so many years ago and spent her whole life paying the price, carrying the weight of the secret. Did the dreams continue? I asked. Until the end? Until she died, Stella replied. After Rachel passed away, the dreams stopped overnight. I would wake up every night hoping to dream about her, but nothing came anymore. It was as if the thread had been cut, and that's when I was sure she was gone. Did you feel it when she died? The question came out in a whisper. I felt it. It was a Thursday, wasn't it? In the afternoon. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I was at home in Boston, Stella continued. I was doing some sewing, listening to music. Suddenly, I felt a pain in my chest, a sharp, strong pain. I fell to the floor, unable to breathe properly. It lasted a few minutes and passed. I got scared. I thought it was a heart problem. I went to the doctor the next day. I had all the tests done. There was nothing. My heart was perfect. It wasn't until Saturday when I saw the obituary in the paper that I understood. That pain wasn't mine. It was hers. I had felt her heart attack hundreds of miles away. Tears were rolling down my face again. I barely noticed. It seemed that since this whole story began, I couldn't stop crying. She was at home, I recounted. She was waiting for me to come back from the store. I had gone to Kroger to buy some milk. When I came back, she was there in the living room. She said she was feeling a pain in her chest. I wanted to take her to the hospital, but she said it was just indigestion, stubborn as always, until she collapsed in my arms. I know, Stella finished. I read it in the paper and imagined the scene. You frantic, her leaving, and me far away, not even knowing my sister was dying. You came to the burial, I said. It wasn't a question. I came. I stayed hidden at the back, behind a large tree. I wanted to see. I wanted to say goodbye, even though she never knew me. I saw you devastated. I saw the neighbors comforting you. I saw... Mom, Evelyn, had already died a few years ago, right? So, there was no one else from the birth family there. Just you and me hidden, invisible. If you had shown up that day, I said, I would have thought you were crazy, or worse, some kind of scam artist. I know. That's why I didn't show up. But after the burial, I couldn't leave. Something held me here. I rented a small house on Insurgente Street nearby. I kept watching you from afar. I saw you go to the store, to the cemetery, walk the streets. You were so alone, so lost. And I was lost too. The two most solitary people in the city, connected by a woman who was no longer here. I got up and started walking around the kitchen. My head was spinning. So much information, so many revelations, separated twins, connected dreams, a woman who watched from afar for 6 months. It was too surreal to process. How many times did you come here? I asked. Many, she admitted. But I always gave up before ringing the bell. I would get here, see the light on, hear the TV playing, know you were inside alone. But I didn't have the courage to ring the bell. What was I going to say? Hi, I'm your dead wife's twin sister. It seemed insane. Last night was different, I said. Last night was different, she agreed. I was walking down the street. It was late at night, insomnia. I've suffered from insomnia since Rachel died. I spend the night awake thinking about her, about how our lives could have been if we had grown up together. And I ended up here on your street. I saw your light on, 5 in the morning, and you awake just like me. 2 insomniacs linked by the same person. She took a deep breath before continuing. Then I thought, enough. Enough of waiting. Enough of watching from afar. Either I find the courage now, or I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. I grabbed my cell phone and called. When you answered, I almost hung up immediately. But then your voice had the same pain as mine. And I spoke. I spoke without thinking. I used the voice that was exactly like my sister's. I asked you to open the door. You scared me half to death, I said without anger. It was true, but I understood the reason now. I know, I'm sorry. It wasn't the best way to do this. I should have thought it through, but I was so desperate to finally introduce myself that I didn't think straight. When you opened that peephole and saw me the way you looked, it was as if you had seen a ghost. And in a way, you did. Am the living ghost of the woman you loved. You're not a ghost, I said, truly looking at her. You are a person of flesh and blood who went through a lot, who lost her sister before even meeting her, who lived a parallel life without ever meeting her other half. Stella wiped her eyes. Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I feel like a ghost myself, like I'm not entirely real. We were two, but we grew up as if we were one. It's a strange feeling, like being incomplete your whole life. I sat down again. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was already past 10 in the morning. We had spent hours talking, hours unraveling a story that began decades ago when 2 babies were separated and grew up without knowing of each other's existence. So now what? I asked. What do you really want, Stella? She thought for a long moment before answering. I want to get to know my sister. I know she's no longer here, but you are. You knew her better than anyone in the world. You loved her, you lived with her, you shared life with her. Through you, I can know a little about her. I can know what she was really like, not just through diary entries or fragmented dreams. "And how long do you plan to stay in town?" I asked. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I have no one waiting for me in Boston. My husband died. I didn't have children. My adoptive parents are gone. I sold my apartment there a few months ago. I was tired of that big city, the noise, the loneliness in the midst of so many people. I thought about moving, and I ended up staying here because this is where Rachel lived, where she was born, where she grew up, where she was happy. It's also where she died," I said softly. "Yes, but it's where she lived the longest. It's where her roots are, our roots. I was born in this town too. I was just snatched away from here too early. Now I'm coming back to where I should have stayed all along." A thought occurred to me. "The neighbors," I said, "when they see you, they'll be terrified. They'll think Rachel has risen from the dead, or that something supernatural is going on." Stella gave a humorless laugh. "I've thought about that, but we'll have to explain. There's no way around it. The truth is strange, but it's the truth. They'll have to accept it. Mrs. Henderson next door is going to have a heart attack," I said, imagining the reaction of the gossipy neighbor. "She was already spying on everything that happened here. Imagine when she sees you." "It's going to be a shock for a lot of people," Stella agreed. "But patience. I can't live hidden forever. And you? You can't keep hiding from life either. You're wasting away, Henry. In these 6 months since Rachel left, you've practically stopped living. You're just existing, not living." It was true. I knew it was true. I had spent 6 months on autopilot. Wake up, eat something, watch TV, sleep, repeat. No purpose, no joy, no anything. Waiting for what? Waiting to die too? Waiting for death to come for me so I could reunite with Rachel? "Maybe," I said slowly. "Maybe you showed up at the right time. I don't know if I believe in coincidences or destiny, but you arrived here when I was at the bottom of the well, when I saw no meaning in anything anymore." "Rachel sent me," Stella said suddenly. I looked at her, confused. "What?" "I dreamed about her," Stella explained. "A few weeks before I called you that morning. I dreamed about Rachel for the first time since she died. It was different from the other dreams. She was facing me. We were looking at each other face to face, 2 identical reflections. And she smiled at me and said, 'Go take care of him. Go take care of my old man. He needs you now.' And I woke up crying because it had been so real, so intense. My heart was pounding hard in my chest. She sent you to take care of me?" "I think so," Stella said, her eyes also full of tears. "I think somehow, wherever she is now, she knows. She knows you're suffering. She knows I'm here. And she connected us so we wouldn't be alone. Neither you nor I." The emotion was choking me. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that Rachel, wherever she was, had somehow sent the sister she never knew to take care of the husband she had to leave behind. It was comforting to think that. But was it real? Or just us wanting to give meaning to chance? "I don't know if I believe in life after death," I said. "I don't know if I believe the dead can communicate with the living. But I want to believe. I want to believe that somehow she knows, and that she is at peace knowing you are here." "I want to believe it too," Stella said. "Because if it's true, it means I finally met my sister. even if it was in a dream, even if it was brief. I finally looked into her eyes and heard her voice telling me something. And that is worth more than anything. We sat there in the kitchen, letting the weight and beauty of it all settle. An impossible story that was real. 2 lives that should have been one. A love that crossed death to connect 2 lonely people. And then I made a decision. Stay, I said. The word came out before I could second-guess myself. Not just for today. Stay in town. We can get to know each other. You can tell me about your life. I can tell you about Rachel. We can, I don't know, be family. The family you 2 never got to be. Stella's face lit up with the most genuine smile I had seen from her so far. Really? You really want that? I do, I said. And I realized it was true. For the first time in 6 months, I felt a small spark of something akin to hope, but with one condition. What is it? We'll take it slow. You won't try to be her, and I won't treat you like you are her. You are Stella, not Rachel. You are 2 different people who happen to have the same face. Do you agree to that? I agree, she said without hesitation. I don't want to be her. I never did. I just want the chance to know her through you, and to know you too. To know the man who made my sister so happy for so long. And so, on that surreal morning, an improbable friendship began. Stella and I, the twin sister of my dead wife and I, united by a woman who was no longer here, but who had somehow left a gift for both of us. The gift of no longer being alone. The days that followed were the strangest, and yet the most comforting I'd had since losing Rachel. Stella stayed in the guest house she had rented, but came to visit me every day. We drank coffee together, talked for hours, and slowly I got to know who she really was. Not the shadow of my wife, but a completely new person, and at the same time, strangely familiar. I discovered that despite looking physically identical, the 2 had very different personalities. Rachel was quiet, reserved, preferred to stay home rather than go out. Stella was more outgoing, enjoyed talking, had a sharp sense of humor that made me laugh. Something I hadn't done in so long, I had forgotten how good it felt. Rachel was methodical, organizing everything meticulously. Stella was more disorganized, creative, let things happen naturally. But there were similarities that made me shiver. The way she rested her hand on her chin when she was thinking. The way she hummed softly when she was cooking. The habit of folding her napkin into a perfect triangle after using it. Small, identical gestures that came from a deep place in the genetics, regardless of upbringing or environment. The neighbors, as I predicted, were stunned when they first saw Stella. Mrs. Henderson next door almost fell off her porch when she saw her walking down the sidewalk. Some people made the sign of the cross. Others ran inside their houses. The gossip spread throughout the neighborhood in a matter of hours. Henry's wife came back from the dead. It's an apparition, a miracle. It's the work of the devil. I had to hold an impromptu meeting in my living room with all the neighbors to explain. I brought Stella, brought the documents, the birth certificate, the old photos. I showed everything. I told the whole story of the separated twins, the guarded secret, the reunion that never happened in life. It was difficult. Some people didn't believe it at first. Some thought it was a made-up story. But I showed proof. Stella talked about her life in Boston, about her adoptive parents, about everything. And slowly, people started to accept it. Mrs. Henderson, the neighborhood's official gossip, was one of the first to hug Stella. "What a story, dear God," she said, crying. "Rachel had a twin sister all this time, and she never knew. How sad. But I'm so glad you came, sweetie. I'm so glad you came to take care of Henry. He was wasting away alone here. And that's exactly what she did. She took care of me. Not in an invasive way, not trying to replace Rachel, but gently, affectionately. She brought home-cooked food. I made too much, and it will spoil if you don't eat it, was always the excuse. She invited me to walk in the park. She kept me company watching TV. We talked about everything. Her life in Boston, my work in the carpentry shop, the neighbors, the weather, and especially, we talked about Rachel. I told stories, thousands of stories from the 40 years we lived together. I told about the silly fights, like the time she didn't speak to me for a week because I had forgotten our anniversary. I told about the joys, like when we took a road trip to California and were mesmerized by the ocean. We who had grown up among the hills. I told about her habits, like how she saved empty containers because she might need them later. I told about her fears, like how she was terrified of spiders, and I always had to be called in to kill the poor things that appeared in the kitchen. Stella absorbed everything, listening to every word with total attention, as if memorizing, saving. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she laughed, but always, always she thanked me. "Thank you for letting me get to know her like this," she would say. "Through you, I feel like I'm finally close to my sister." Weeks passed, then months. Stella's presence became natural in my life. So much so that one day I realized I was smiling again, laughing again, making plans for the next day again, simple things I had lost when Rachel died. But along with that came a confusion that grew in my chest and that I tried to ignore but couldn't. I began to realize that I eagerly awaited her visits, that I kept an eye on the clock, waiting to hear the doorbell, that when she left, the house felt empty again, but in a different way. Not the emptiness of Rachel's absence, but the emptiness of Stella's absence. And that scared me because I knew what was happening. I was developing feelings for her, feelings that went beyond friendship, beyond gratitude, and that filled me with guilt. How could I feel something like that? She was my wife's sister. She had the same face as the woman I had loved. It was wrong, completely wrong. I started to pull away. I made excuses when she called, said I was tired, that I needed to rest. She noticed, of course. "Is everything all right, Henry?" she would ask with that worried look. "Did I do something wrong?" No, I assured her. "I'm just a little tired." But it was a lie, and she knew it was a lie. Until one evening, I was at the cemetery. It was a Sunday, as always. I brought flowers to Rachel's grave, white roses, her favorite. I cleaned the headstone, removed the dry leaves that had fallen around it, and sat there on the ground, leaning against the cold stone, as I sometimes did when I needed to think. "Rachel," I began to speak, as I always did. "I don't know what to do. Your sister, Stella, she came and she's wonderful. She made me live again. She made me remember there's a reason to wake up in the morning. But I think I'm feeling things I shouldn't be feeling. And I feel like I'm betraying you. I feel dirty, like I'm doing something wrong." The wind sighed through the trees in the cemetery. It wasn't an answer, I knew that. It was just the wind, but at that moment, it felt like she was listening to me. "She's not you," I continued, tears beginning to fall. "I know she's not you. She has your face, but she's not you. She's another person, with another history, other ways. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly why I'm feeling this. Because she is herself. Not a replacement, not a copy, but someone new who entered my life. I stayed there for a long time, crying, talking to myself like a crazy old man. And when I calmed down, when the tears dried, I had a strange feeling, a sense of peace, as if she had somehow given me permission, as if she had said, "It's okay, old man. It's okay for you to move on." It was an illusion, probably a projection of what I wanted to hear, but it was what I needed at that moment. The next day, Stella showed up at my door. I hadn't made plans with her, but she came anyway. And when I opened the door and saw her standing there with a container of apple pie in her hands and that shy smile on her face, I knew. I knew I couldn't run from what I was feeling anymore. "Can we talk?" she asked, really asked. I let her in. We sat in the living room, the untouched pie on the coffee table. The silence was heavy, uncomfortable, until she spoke first. "You're pulling away," she said directly, "and I know why." My heart leaped. "You know?" "I know. Because I'm feeling the same thing." Her words froze me. "And I'm scared, so scared, because I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's wrong. I just know that when I'm near you, I feel complete, as if I've finally found where I belong." I swallowed. "Stella, let me speak," she interrupted gently. "Please." I nodded for her to continue. She took a deep breath before going on. "Since I met you, since that crazy morning, I felt a connection. At first I thought it was because of Rachel. I thought it was because you were the only link I had to her. But as I got to know you, I realized it wasn't just that. It was you. The way you talk, the way you care for things, the way you love. You loved my sister with an intensity I've never seen in anyone, and I wanted to be loved like that too. But I don't know if I'm loving you for you," I confessed, "or if I'm loving you because you look like her. And that drives me crazy, because it's not fair to you, or to me, or to Rachel's memory." "I know," she said. "I think about that every day. You look at me and you see her. I'm just a replacement, a comfort, and if that's the case, I don't want it. I don't want to be her shadow. I want to be myself." "You are yourself," I said firmly. "I realize that. You two are different, very different. Yes, you have her face, her voice, some gestures, but you are not her. And I think that's why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. Because you are Stella, not Rachel." Her eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really? Rachel was my first great love, my only love for 40 years. And she will always have a place in my heart, always. But the heart isn't limited, you know. It can love more than once, in different ways. And what I'm feeling for you is different from what I felt for her. But no less true." "But it's so soon," she said. "She passed away less than a year ago. People will talk, they'll find it strange, they'll judge." "Let them talk," I said, surprised by my own conviction. We spent our whole lives caring about what others think. I'm too old to keep doing that. And so are you. We deserve to be happy, even if it's a strange, improbable happiness that no one understands." She started to cry, really cry, and I went to her. I sat beside her on the couch and hugged her. She rested her head on my shoulder, and we stayed like that for a long time. Two solitary people who had found each other in the most unusual way possible. "Can we go slow?" she asked between sobs. "With no rush?" "We can," I guaranteed. "We have all the time in the world. We don't need to rush anything. And that's what we did. We went slow, very slow. We continued to see each other almost every day. But now with the truth between us. The truth that something was happening there. Something new, frightening, but also beautiful. It took months until the first kiss. It happened one afternoon when we were walking through the town square, the same park where I had met Rachel decades ago. The same park where I had spilled that damn ice cream. We were sitting on a bench, watching the activity, talking about nothing in particular. And suddenly she looked at me and smiled. And I knew it was the moment. It was a soft, shy kiss. Like teenagers in first love, and when we parted, we were both blushing. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked, confused. "For letting me be me. For not trying to make me a copy of her. For loving me for who I am." "You don't have to thank me," I said. "You brought me back to life. I'm the one who has to thank you." More months passed. The relationship deepened naturally. She started leaving some clothes at my house. Then it was a toothbrush, then some books, until one day I asked, "Why don't you just move in here?" She was surprised. "Really? Really? It makes no sense for you to pay rent for a house when you spend most of your time here. And I like having you near. The house feels less empty." And so, Stella moved into the house where her sister had lived for so many years. It was strange at first, very strange. But with time, it became natural. She brought her things, mixed them with mine, but left everything of Rachel's as it was. The photos, the personal objects, the memories. "She is part of our history," Stella said. "We can't erase her." A year and a half after we met, one Sunday morning after church, I asked the question. We were having coffee in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we had had our first real conversation. The sun was streaming through the window, illuminating her face. And I looked at her and knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life by her side. "Marry me," I said directly, without preparation. I just said it. She almost dropped her coffee mug. "What?" "Marry me. I know it's a crazy situation. I know it's strange, but I love you. I love Stella, not Rachel. You. And I want to spend the rest of my days with you." "Henry," she began, her eyes filling with tears. "Are you sure? Really sure? Because if you have any doubt, if you think you're doing this out of pity or loneliness, or because I look like her—" "I'm sure," I interrupted. "More sure than I've been of anything in life. I love you. I love you for your flaws, for your quirks, for the way you sing off key in the shower. I love you because you make me laugh, because you challenge me, because you made me live again. So, yes, I'm sure." She got up from the chair, came to me, knelt down in front of me, and hugged me tightly. "Yes," she whispered in my ear. "Yes, I'll marry you." We got married 2 months later. It was a small, simple ceremony at the same church where I had married Rachel. Father Sebastian, who was getting old and knew the whole story, gave a beautiful sermon about second chances and love that transcends death. The neighbors came. Mrs. Henderson was there in the front row, crying copiously. And in the front row, too, in a place of honor, was a photograph of Rachel. "She's here with us," Stella said when she saw the photo before the ceremony began. "Somehow, she's here." And I believed it. I believed that from somewhere Rachel was watching. She was watching the husband she loved so much find happiness again. And she was watching the sister she never knew finally have the family she always wanted. When the priest declared us husband and wife, and I kissed Stella, I felt something strange, a peace, a feeling that everything was somehow right, as if the pieces of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. Life went on. We sold the house Stella had rented. She brought her last few things. We remodeled one of the rooms to make a studio where she could sew. The designer she was hadn't died. She was just sleeping. I went back to doing small repairs for the neighbors, nothing like a big shop, but enough to keep me busy. And every Sunday, without fail, we went to the cemetery together. We brought flowers, cleaned the headstone, and talked to her, both of us. It was strange, yes, but it was our normal. "Thank you, Rachel," Stella always said. "Thank you for sending me to take care of him, and thank you for letting him teach me who you were." The years kept passing. We truly grew old together, Stella and I. Her hair turned completely white, just like Rachel's. But she still had that outgoing manner of hers, that easy laugh that brought me joy. We built a good life, simple, but good. The neighbors, who at first found everything so bizarre, eventually accepted it. "It's the craziest love story I've ever seen," Mrs. Henderson always said. "But it's also one of the most beautiful." And she was right. It was crazy, all right, but it was ours. One day, about 3 years after the wedding, we were tidying up the attic. There were many old things up there, boxes upon boxes we had never opened. Stella was determined to organize everything. "We can't just leave all this accumulating dust," she said. "Let's see what's there and what we can throw away." It was while moving these boxes that she found an old shoebox tied with string. It had Rachel's name written on the lid with a marker. "Look at this," she called to me. "It must be her stuff." We brought the box down, sat at the kitchen table, and opened it carefully. Inside there was a bit of everything: old letters, photos, some jewelry, a rosary, and at the bottom, underneath everything, a notebook. Another notebook. But this wasn't Mom's diary. This was Rachel's own. "She had a diary?" Stella said, surprised. "I didn't know." "Me neither," I admitted. "She never mentioned it." We looked at the notebook, unsure if we should open it. It was intimate, private, her thoughts. But curiosity was stronger. With trembling hands, Stella opened to the first page. It was Rachel's handwriting, that round, careful script I knew so well. She had started the diary shortly after marrying me. It had entries about the first years of marriage, about the joys and difficulties, about trying to have children and the frustration when they couldn't, about the love she felt for me. It was beautiful and painful to read at the same time. Stella slowly flipped through, reading aloud some fragments until she got near the end, to the last pages. And what was written there gave us goosebumps from head to toe. Stella began to read, her voice shaking. "I had that dream again, the dream about the girl who looks like me. But this time it was different. We were face to face. She smiled at me and I knew. I don't know how, but I knew. She is my sister. I have a sister I never knew." Stella stopped reading, her hands trembling so much she almost dropped the notebook. "She knew," she whispered. "Somehow, she knew." "Keep going," I urged, my heart beating fast. She continued reading. I don't know where this knowledge came from. My mother always said I was an only child. But in the dreams, I see this girl, and I am absolutely certain. She is my sister, my twin sister. We were separated somehow. When? Why? I don't know, but she exists. She is somewhere, and maybe one day we'll meet, or maybe not. Maybe we'll live our whole lives separated. But wherever she is, I want her to know. I miss her. I miss someone I've never met. Tears streamed down Stella's face without stopping. She missed me, she sobbed. Even without knowing me, she missed me. Keep reading, I urged, also crying. Her voice barely came out, but she continued. I had another dream. This time she spoke to me. She said her name, Stella. What a beautiful name, like mine, but different. We talked, I don't remember about what, but when I woke up, I had a feeling of peace, as if I had found a piece of myself that was lost. Stella turned a few more pages. The last entries were from just days before Rachel died, and what was written there was heartbreaking. I dreamed about Stella again. This time she was crying. I don't know why. I tried to comfort her, but I couldn't touch her. It was as if there was glass between us. I woke up anxious. Where is she? Is she okay? I need to find her. I need to tell her she's not alone, that someone is thinking of her, that she has a sister she never met, but who loves her anyway. The last entry was from the week she died. The handwriting was a little shaky, as if she was nervous or agitated when she wrote. I had the most real dream of all. Stella was sad, very sad. Alone in an empty house, widowed, I realized, somehow. And lonely, with no one. I went to her in the dream and hugged her. I said, "You are not alone. You never were. I was always here." She cried in my arms, and I cried too. When I woke up, Henry was worried. He asked me why I was crying in my sleep. I didn't tell him about the dreams. He would think I was going crazy. But I'm not. I know I'm not. Stella exists, and she needs help. If I could, I would go looking for her. But how? I don't even know where she is, or if she's real or just a projection of my mind. But deep down in my heart, I know it. She is real. And one day, somehow, we will meet. If not in this life, maybe in the next. And that's where the diary ended. That was the last thing Rachel wrote before she died. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Stella and I were hugging, crying together. Rachel knew, Stella said between sobs. Somehow, through the dreams, through that inexplicable connection between twins, she knew. She knew she had a sister. She knew the sister was alone and suffering, and she wanted to help, but she didn't know how. She wanted to find you, I said, my voice choked. She wanted to help you, but she died before she could. But she did help, Stella said. She sent me to you. In that dream I had weeks before I called you. She told me to come take care of you. And I came. She did in death what she couldn't do in life. She brought me to you. She united us. Stella hugged me tighter. Thank you, Rachel, she said, looking at the ceiling as if her sister could hear. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for sending me Henry. Thank you for giving me the family I always wanted. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't look for you sooner. I'm sorry I waited so long. I'm sorry we didn't meet in this life. We stayed there hugging for what felt like an eternity. When we finally calmed down, we decided to do something. We took Rachel's diary and Mom's diary, the two notebooks that told stories of lives separated but connected, and we put them away together in a special box. A box just for them. For the memories and thoughts of the three women who had shaped our history. The mother who had to make an impossible decision. The daughter who stayed and lived without knowing her sister. And the daughter who left and spent her life feeling incomplete. We put the box in the bedroom closet, And every time we needed to remember, every time the pain of their separation squeezed our hearts, we opened it and read. And we always ended up giving thanks. Thanking for the crazy story that was our life. For the 5 o'clock in the morning call that changed everything. For Stella's courage to finally show up. And especially for Rachel, who, from somewhere beyond this life, had orchestrated everything. The years continued to pass. We truly grew old. That kind of old where the body hurts, where every movement is slower, where memory sometimes fails. But we were happy. Happy in a way I never thought I would be again after losing Rachel. And every Sunday, religiously, we went to the grave. We brought flowers, talked to her, told her the news. "Your husband is driving me crazy with his stubbornness," Stella would say, smiling. "Exactly the way he drove you crazy, I imagine." And I would laugh, because it was true, so that's it. That's the story I wanted to tell. The story of how my wife's bank called me at 5 in the morning, 6 months after she died. Only it wasn't her. It was the twin sister she never knew she had. The sister who was given up for adoption when they were little, and who spent her whole life feeling like a half, was missing. That scare in the early morning, that call that made me pass out from fear, was actually the beginning of a second chance. An opportunity I wasn't looking for. An opportunity I didn't even know I needed. But that came at the right time. Bringing the face of the woman I loved. But being a completely different person. Stella didn't replace Rachel. No one will ever replace her. Rachel was my first great love. She was the woman with whom I shared 40 years of my life. She was the one who made me happy in a way I had never been before. And she will always have a sacred place in my heart. But the heart is big. It has room for more than one love. Stella conquered her own space, not by resembling her sister, but by being herself. By making me laugh again. By making me want to wake up the next day. By showing me that there was still life to be lived. Stories to be built, happiness to be felt. People ask if it's not strange, if I don't get confused looking at her face and seeing Rachel. And the answer is, at first, yes. At first it was very strange, but over time, I learned to see the differences. The little mole on the other side, the way she raises her eyebrow when she's annoyed, the louder, freer laugh. They are two different women who, by chance, have the same face. And I learned to love both of them in different ways, at different times, but with the same intensity. And you know what I think happened? I think Rachel, from wherever she is now, saw. She saw me wasting away alone. She saw her sisters suffering alone too. And she decided to do something. She sent her to me through dreams, through signs, through whatever you want to call it. She united us. She did what she couldn't do in life. She met her sister through me and gave me her sister as a companion. It's crazy, maybe, but it's a beautiful crazy. A crazy that gave meaning to lives that were adrift. We are old, tired, full of aches. But we are together. And every Sunday, without fail, we go to Rachel's grave. We bring flowers, we give thanks, because without her, without that love that taught me, without that impossible connection she had with her sister, none of this would have happened. Sometimes, when I'm almost asleep, I swear I hear it. I hear Rachel's laughter, that wonderful laughter that did me so much good, and I know she is happy. Happy because the husband she loved found a reason to continue. Happy because the sister she never knew finally has the family she always wanted. Happy because, in some miraculous and inexplicable way, she managed to unite the three lives that were destined to meet. If there is one profound truth to be drawn from the impossible story of Henry and Stella, it is this: that love, in its purest and most enduring form, is not defined by physical presence, but by the bonds we forge and the selflessness with which we honor memory while embracing the future. Henry's initial shock, the terrifying fear that the past had returned, was ultimately the catalyst for a liberation from the crippling silence of grief. The ultimate lesson is the courage to accept love in a new, unexpected vessel. You must speak up, even when the truth feels too strange or too painful to be believed, because silence protects secrets, but it also suffocates life. The twin who was sent by a dream didn't replace the one who was lost. She taught Henry that honoring a past love doesn't mean you must refuse a future one. The human heart, though it can break, is not a finite resource. And sometimes, the greatest act of love to those who are gone is finding the strength to live, laugh, and love again, even if that love arrives in the most impossible, mirror image way imaginable.